The storm around the Dupree estate had been gathering for weeks, unseen by those outside the towering gates. Within, behind polished glass and marble, Anita moved with the precision of someone who had carried too many secrets for too long. Her war against Leslie was no longer a matter of whispers and innuendo. It had become a strategy of annihilation, executed with the cold discipline of a woman who knew that only destruction would bring peace. The first strike landed in silence. Leslie awoke one morning to discover that the effortless luxury she had flaunted had been severed at its root. Her accounts, once overflowing with the liquid gold of influence and inheritance, had been frozen without warning. Banks closed their digital doors, creditors circled like vultures, and the suffocating weight of public exposure loomed over her. Anita had found the weak artery and cut deep. Leslie's empire began collapsing at a speed she could barely comprehend. The boutiques, the charity fronts, the shadow investments she thought untouchable, each one crumbled as the funds dried up. Behind her designer masks and fragile charm, panic consumed her. The mirror reflected a woman aging overnight, stripped of the armor she had spent years constructing. But Anita's vengeance did not end with money. She knew the law could be weaponized, and she ensured the storm would reach Leslie's doorstep. Allegations surfaced in carefully timed leaks, documents appearing in prosecutors' hands as if conjured from the shadows. Fraud, embezzlement, and whispered conspiracies of bribery painted Leslie not as a socialite, but as a criminal awaiting shackles. The word prison became a ghost that followed her through every corridor of the mansion, clinging to her like a shadow she could never outrun. Inside the Dupree household, the repercussions spread like poison through water. Vernon, long the patriarch whose steady voice had anchored generations, felt his control slipping into irrelevance. The war between Anita and Leslie turned the home into a battlefield, and Vernon's authority dissolved in the chaos. The man who once commanded respect now stood powerless, watching as his legacy fractured. The weight of failure bent his shoulders, his silence becoming a heavier condemnation than words ever could. Nicole found herself trapped between loyalty and ambition. She had lived her life dancing on the fragile tightrope of approval, her every step calculated to maintain the fragile balance between family duty and personal gain. Yet Anita's move against Leslie unsettled her deeply. Nicole had benefited from Leslie's largesse, had used her influence as a shield, and now the collapse threatened to pull her into the abyss. Fear twisted into resentment, and resentment grew into a quiet, dangerous rage. She began searching for someone to blame, even if that someone shared her blood. Danny, still scarred from her own traumas, watched the unraveling with eyes that held too much knowledge. Where others panicked, she observed, storing every fracture, every slip of the mask. But knowledge became a burden. Anita's ruthlessness terrified her, while Leslie's downfall awakened a terrible realization: survival in this family demanded cruelty. Danny's innocence, what little remained, dissolved under the weight of recognition. If she wanted to live, she would have to choose a side, and no side promised safety. The Dupree estate became a cage. The air thickened with suspicion, every glance a potential betrayal. Allies turned into spies, and whispers echoed louder than footsteps. Staff members disappeared without notice, some fired, others bought off to ensure silence. Doors locked earlier each evening, windows shuttered, security tightened as though the family feared an external invasion. Yet the real danger bled from within, tearing open wounds that no guard could stop. Leslie, desperate and cornered, sought allies in shadows. She attempted to buy loyalty with promises she could no longer guarantee, offering secrets as currency. What she failed to see was that Anita had already spread the infection of doubt. Every potential ally questioned Leslie's worth, fearing that siding with her meant sharing her ruin. Isolation became her sentence long before any courtroom declared it official. Anita, however, carried her victory with the cold detachment of someone who had sacrificed too much to save her triumph. Each move had cost her pieces of herself. Nights alone in her study, surrounded by documents and silent screens, she felt the hollowness of conquest. She was winning, but she was also becoming something unrecognizable. The family she swore to protect twisted in her grasp, and the control she sought slipped into obsession. Clifton's presence in the house darkened with each day. Once a figure of strength, he now drifted into rooms like a ghost, carrying the bitterness of irrelevance. He watched Anita grow sharper, colder, while Leslie decayed into ruin. He resented them both, and his resentment fermented into dangerous thoughts. The balance of power, he realized, was shifting in ways that could erase him entirely. He would not let himself be erased. In the weeks that followed, whispers of investigations grew into headlines. The Dupree name, once polished with wealth and prestige, began to crack under public scrutiny. Reporters camped outside the gates, helicopters circled, and strangers shouted accusations through the bars. The illusion of privacy shattered, exposing the family to a world eager to see royalty bleed. The children felt the weight as heavily as the elders. Alliances formed in secrecy. Nicole and Danny tested each other's trust, searching for leverage. Vernon withdrew further, leaving the battlefield to others. Clifton made clandestine calls, preparing a countermove none could predict. Every member of the family carried knives, some metaphorical, others not, and every bond was poisoned by suspicion. As Leslie's trial date drew near, Anita should have felt victorious. Instead, she awoke each morning to an emptiness that grew with every victory. The estate she had vowed to preserve had become a graveyard of love and trust. Her hands, once symbols of nurture, now carried the stain of calculated destruction. She wondered, in the silence of midnight, if she had killed more than Leslie's future. Perhaps she had killed her family's soul. The night before Leslie was to be summoned to court, the Dupree estate erupted. Secrets that had been buried clawed their way to the surface. Nicole discovered documents linking Anita's financial maneuvers to offshore accounts that could destroy them all. Danny stumbled upon evidence that Clifton had conspired with outsiders, a betrayal that threatened to detonate the fragile foundation left standing. Vernon, silent for too long, chose that night to shatter his stillness, unleashing truths that fractured what little unity remained. By dawn, the gates of the estate no longer kept the world out. They trapped the family within, caged with their sins. Leslie's frozen accounts were only the beginning. Anita's war had set fire to the dynasty itself. What emerged from the ashes would not be a family but a battlefield of survivors, each scarred, each desperate, each willing to destroy the other for the illusion of control. The gates had once promised safety, prestige, and belonging. Now they loomed like prison bars, holding captives who had mistaken wealth for freedom. Anita had won her war, but victory had never felt so much like loss. And the world beyond those gates was waiting, hungry for the spectacle of their downfall.